What if I told you that the year isn't actually 2025, but 1728? What if Charlemagne, one of history's greatest emperors, never existed? What if 297 years of human history were completely fabricated? According to one controversial theory, the entire Middle Ages from 614 to 911 AD never happened. Cathedrals that took centuries to build, ancient manuscripts, archaeological evidence, all potentially part of the greatest conspiracy in human history. This is the phantom time hypothesis, and by the end of this video, you'll question everything you thought you knew about history. I'm going to show you the evidence, the counter-arguments, and let you decide. Were 300 years of history simply invented? In 1991, German historian Heribert Illig published a theory that shook the academic world. He claimed that the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII conspired to fabricate roughly 300 years of history. But why? According to Illig, these powerful men wanted to position themselves at the symbolic year 1000 AD. The problem, it was only around 700 AD. So they simply added 300 years to the calendar. Illig argues that the entire Carolingian period, including Charlemagne's empire, was invented to fill this gap. Think about it. If you control the calendar, you control history itself. But how could they pull off such a massive deception? According to the theory, medieval monks were enlisted to create false documents, forge charters, and backdate manuscripts. Hundreds of monasteries across Europe coordinated to write a fictional history, and we believed it for over 1,000 years. Let's start with one of Illig's most compelling arguments. Romanesque architecture. In the standard timeline, architectural styles barely evolved from 600 to 1000 AD. Then suddenly, Gothic architecture explodes onto the scene. Illig asks, why is there such a massive gap in architectural innovation? Buildings from 600 AD look remarkably similar to those from 950 AD. What were architects doing for 300 years? His answer, those 300 years never existed. Here's where it gets really interesting. Illig points out that carbon-14 dating has a margin of error of plus or minus 60 years or more for this period. That means we can't accurately date artifacts to specific decades in the early Middle Ages. If the margin of error is so large, could we be misdating everything by 300 years? The artifacts we think are from 800 AD could actually be from 500 AD or 1100 AD. Then there's Charlemagne himself. According to official history, Charles the Great united much of Western Europe and founded the Holy Roman Empire. But here's the thing. Almost all documentation about Charlemagne was written after the Phantom Time period. The earliest comprehensive biography of Charlemagne was written by Otto, but the oldest surviving copies date from the 10th century, conveniently after the alleged fabrication. Could Charlemagne be a fictional composite of multiple rulers? Archaeological evidence from 614 to 911 AD is surprisingly sparse across Europe. There are significant gaps in pottery styles, burial practices, and settlement patterns. Illig argues this isn't because people were living differently, but because people weren't living then at all. In Byzantine Empire records, there are strange discontinuities. In Anglo-Saxon England, there are mysterious gaps in the archaeological record. Finally, our modern calendar is a mess of corrections. Julius Caesar created the Julian calendar. Pope Gregory XIII reformed it in 1582. But why did we need to drop 10 days? In 1582, the official reason: drift from the solar year. But Illig calculated that 1,627 years of Julian calendar should have created 13 days of drift. Not DS 3 days are missing. 3 days that represent roughly 297 years. Coincidence? Now, before you start rewriting your history books, let's hear why virtually every historian on Earth thinks this theory is absolutely wrong. Here's the killer argument. Astronomy doesn't lie. Chinese, Arab, and Byzantine astronomers meticulously recorded eclipses, comets, and planetary positions throughout the alleged Phantom Time period. Chinese records document solar eclipses in 693, 709 in 878 AD. These can be verified by modern astronomical calculations working backward. The eclipses happened exactly when the records say they did. China had no reason to coordinate with European conspirators. Islamic astronomers recorded Halley's comet in 684 and 760 AD. We can calculate Halley's orbit precisely. The comet was exactly where they said it was, when they said it was there. The conspiracy theory requires the entire world to be in on it. But the Maya in Central America had their own independent calendar. The Islamic Empire kept meticulous records. All these civilizations, with no contact with each other, would need to perfectly coordinate to fabricate the same 300 years. That's not just unlikely, it's impossible. While Illig claims evidence is sparse, archaeologists counter that we have thousands of artifacts from this period: coins, weapons, pottery, buildings, manuscripts, gravestones. Also, tree ring dating, or dendrochronology, provides year-by-year records going back thousands of years. Trees don't lie, and they don't conspire. The rings show continuous growth through the phantom centuries, matching our timeline perfectly. And think about the logistics. To fabricate 300 years of history, you'd need to create tens of thousands of documents, hundreds of architectural styles, genealogies for thousands of families, and trade records, all coordinated across kingdoms that were constantly at war. And nobody, in 1,000 years, would slip up and reveal the conspiracy. Occam's razor states that the simplest explanation is usually correct. What's simpler? That the Middle Ages happened as documented, or that a massive international conspiracy fabricated 300 years of history with perfect coordination, and nobody ever revealed it? The phantom time hypothesis isn't alone. Flat Earth, moon landing hoaxes, ancient aliens. Why do these theories persist? Our brains are pattern recognition machines. Sometimes we see patterns that aren't there. Illig saw gaps and connected them into a pattern. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Conspiracy theories also make us feel special, like we know a hidden truth. The theory resonates because it targets institutions many people distrust: the church, governments, and academics. And history is messy. It is more satisfying to believe there is a simple explanation than to accept that history is genuinely complicated. Even though the phantom time hypothesis is almost certainly wrong, it teaches us valuable lessons. Historians should question sources. Skepticism is healthy, but it must be evident. Illig is right that medieval sources were sometimes forged or exaggerated. History has been manipulated, just not to this extent. We don't know everything about the past, but we don't know everything's different from everything we know is wrong. What ultimately disproves the phantom time hypothesis is that multiple independent lines of evidence all converge on the same timeline. Astronomical records, tree rings, Chinese chronicles, Islamic scholarship, archaeology, and European documents. When dozens of different types of evidence from unconnected sources all agree, you can be pretty confident you're on the right track. So, did the Middle Ages happen? Yes, definitely. The evidence is overwhelming. Did Charlemagne exist? Yes. Was he exactly as the legends describe? Probably not. History is always more complicated than the story. The year really is 2025, not 1728. Those 300 years happened. People lived, loved, fought, and died during them. Their lives weren't fabricated. But the phantom time hypothesis reminds us of something important. History requires evidence, scrutiny, and critical thinking. We should question our sources and demand proof. The Middle Ages were real, but the way we think about them, understand them, and remember them, that's always being What other facts of history are we getting wrong? That's a question for another video. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that subscribe button. Comment below. What historical event do you think we've gotten wrong? Thanks for watching.